We just got one. A new edge rusher to add to Jason Taylor's collection from the 912 to the 305. Herbert Scroggins. Welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And a couple of days ago, Scroggins to Auburn seemed like that was a wrap. But Miami, on his official visit this past weekend, was able to turn that narrative on its head. I am Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and writer for allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started. My head's spinning with the amount of verbal commits Miami's been landing lately. You know, last night we had Chris Ewald. We had Max Buchanan the night before. Herbert Scroggins the third. He goes by Third. That's the nickname that he goes by. Welcome to the U, Mr. Scroggins. And let's talk about this player. This guy, I think he's a little bit underrated. Rivals does have him as a 4-star. 24/7 Sports still has him as a 3-star. Expect this to be a player who does rise up the rankings a bit. So Miami had to beat out Auburn for this one. We'll talk about that in a second. But Herbert Scroggins, 6'2", 235 pounds, tremendous motor. I love watching this guy's film, his huddle reel. He's got an old school pass rushing mentality. He's at a Benedictine Military School in Savannah, Georgia. Miami's been doing really well in that area, Georgia and Savannah specifically. The other top teams in Scroggins' top 4 were Auburn, who were the prohibitive favorites for quite a while, UNC and Georgia Tech. We talk about Miami beating out the Auburn Tigers for his signature. Up until a couple days ago, he was going to pick Auburn, right? We talked about that with Brian Smith, who actually lives in Auburn, Alabama, now covers that program very closely. And he said that was the move. He was expected to pick Auburn, but he postponed his announcement. He was going to announce on Tuesday. He postponed his announcement until today, Friday, and Miami has been picking up big-time momentum for the past several days ever since Scroggins' visit. Miami gave him something to think about, so he decided to postpone that announcement by a few days, and the Hurricanes end up being the pick. Now, here's more from our guy, Brian Smith. And by the way, if you want to check out the Recruiting Overlord scouting report on Scroggins, it is available at allhurricanes.com. So you want to check that out at allhurricanes.com. Brian Smith writes about Herbert Scroggins. His 2023 performance in high school is one with numerous plays that display a burst off the edge to quickly defeat offensive tackles with a hand swipe or brute force via a bull rush being among his repertoire. And I love Scroggins as a physical specimen. I love watching that bull rush from him. He bends well off the edge, shows a rapid change of direction to help keep blockers from slowing him down. He will also drop into coverage and stick with smaller offensive skill players. That was something that Scroggins talked about that he likes about Miami's defense, the opportunity to do just that. As for his recruitment, Smith said, there's a long-term reason the Miami football staff wants Scroggins on their roster. It's the overall upside this young man possesses, he writes. His sheer athleticism, combined with his tremendous frame, provides a myriad of options for defensive coordinator Lance Guidry and the Hurricanes. Scroggins certainly did so for Benedictine this past year. That's his high school. Here are his stats in high school so far. 84 tackles, 61 solo, 12 sacks. So good time player. I also reached out to Larry Blustein, our boy Blue, for his scouting report on the newest Miami Hurricanes verbal commit. Blustein, of course, has probably scouted every high school player in the country. It's insane. Larry Blustein has like a mental encyclopedia of every player in America. Here's what he told me about Scroggins. Pure pass rusher, Blue said. Quick off the ball. He plays whistle to whistle. And then Blue writes, Jason Taylor will make him a monster. While the competition he played in Savannah was not great, he was easily head and shoulders better than everywhere else on the field. So also on this episode, folks, we're going to talk about what adding Herbert Scroggins III does for Miami's recruiting rankings. Of course, over the past few days, with the additions of Max Buchanan, Chris Ewald, and now Scroggins, Miami has made some serious jumps. I mean, I think a week ago, Miami's recruiting class was in the 40s, and now, spoiler alert, Miami has jumped up several spots in the current recruiting rankings. We will talk about it. We'll also talk about what Herbert Scroggins had to say after his Miami visit, which clearly brought a change of heart if he was a strong Auburn lean before that. And also, there could be another verbal commit that I think is going to go in Miami's favor tonight. We'll talk about that. And there's a new Fong bomb for Miami, a player that we've talked about a lot in recent weeks on Locked On Canes. Another very important defensive player in this class. Steve Wiltfong has predicted him to land at Miami. So you know what we say, my friends? We are only getting started. And by the way, happy Friday. We made it. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. And you know, I'm only getting started with eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Herbert Scroggins III, four-star edge rusher out of Savannah, Georgia, has offered a verbal pledge to the Miami Hurricanes. And folks, we're going to continue to see Jason Taylor and Joe Salavea, I expect, to absolutely crush it in this cycle with defensive line recruiting. And somebody else we're looking at. I don't know exactly when he's going to make an announcement, but there has been a lot of momentum for Miami possibly landing five-star Iose Epenesa. Really battling Iowa for him. Epenesa, his father and two brothers played for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So there's obviously a legacy and a lot of family pull in that direction, but Epenesa seems to really like Miami. The family seems to really like Miami. So we'll have to see if that ends up being the move there. But yeah, it would be potential moves like that. You know, we saw what Miami did with defensive line recruiting last year with the Armando Blunt, Booker Pickett Jr. And by the way, Booker Pickett Jr., we give him an assist here on this Scroggins commitment because B9, Booker Pickett, was actually Herbert Scroggins' host for his Miami visit. So it seems like Mr. Pickett hit it out of the park when it came to explaining to Scroggins why Miami was the move for him. In fact, there's some quotes on that. Here's what Herbert Scroggins III told Kane Sport on 3 Sports about his visit to Miami. And we talked about, again, what he likes about Miami's defensive system, what he likes about Lance Guidry's D. He said, quote, I can rush the passer here, drop, do different types of things, he said. The Miami got his final official visit of the summer, and he said that had an amazing impact. I'm not going to lie. It was an amazing impact. I have some hard choices, he said at the time, Georgia Tech, UNC, Auburn, and here. But this school, I'm glad I visited as my last visit. It was amazing, he said. So he talked about his host, Booker Pickett Jr., said he had a big impact, he told Kane Sport. He said, being Booker, that he chose the school because of how they coach the D-line and how he wants to make it to the league and get better, Scroggins said. Everyone wants to make it to the league, and when you have a Hall of Famer coaching you, that's JT, you can definitely do that. So again, the announcement was postponed from Tuesday until today, and the Miami Hurricanes get some very good news on Herbert Scroggins. And so, all right, let's talk about where this puts Miami's recruiting class now, because yeah, we talked about it. Miami's been a riser in recent weeks, and this we're barely halfway done with the marathon here, because we're still a little over 5 months away from National Signing Day. Obviously, we know Miami wants to add more impact players to this class, right? We talk about, even after adding Max Buchanan a couple of nights ago, Miami really wants SJ Olofai-Tuli. We had 2025 quarterback commit Luke Nickel on yesterday, and I mentioned to Luke, hey, you've already got 4 offensive linemen in the class coming in with you, and he emphasized, I don't think we're done yet. Okay. And I've said the same thing. I don't think Miami's done yet when it comes to offensive line recruiting. Obviously, Miami's not done yet when it comes to defensive back recruiting, because yes, Chris Ewald was a huge addition last night. Miami is still very much looking in the direction of players like DJ Pickett. It's probably not going to be announcing until October 5th. It's the date that the 5-star cornerback has planned. And here's a nugget. I almost forgot to bring this up, but this happened late last night. So we've on this show talked about 5-star safety. Well, 4-star, I guess technically. He may end up earning a 5-star, but 4-star safety Hilton Drake Stubs, who had long been committed to USC, but we have been hearing the buzz for several weeks. Stubs, who's a Jacksonville, Florida kid, was probably going to back off the USC commitment, because oftentimes when East Coast guys make the decision, I'm going to go west and play at USC, a lot of times it's too far from home. We see a lot of East Coast players end up backing off the USC predictions. Drake Stubs did just that last night. And he did it in a very classy way, by the way. Like, he wrote a letter, an open letter to Lincoln Riley. He was, very thankful to USC, which he did it the right way. Listen, obviously, you're going to hurt some feelings there because you decided you're not going to be playing there, but decommitted from USC in the classiest way possible did Drake Stubs. And his recruitment is back open again. I don't know when he wants to announce. I mean, personally, I would say take your time, because, you've already been committed somewhere verbally. You want to make sure your next decision is the final decision. So I don't want him to rush into anything, but it does seem like for Drake Stubs, it's probably going to come down to University of Miami, where there's been some buzz. Also, the University of Florida, there's been some buzz for Stubs. And of course, Jacksonville is right in the backyard of Gainesville, or vice versa. I guess you'd say Gainesville is like near the backyard of Jacksonville, because Jacksonville's a much bigger city, but, very close in proximity. He grew up a Gators fan. Brian Smith verified that for us. That doesn't always, become the deciding factor for these things, but it seems like it's going to be Miami versus Florida for Drake Stubs. And man, if before this cycle is over, if Miami can end up pulling in Stubs and DJ Pickett, we're going to be talking the same way about Miami's defensive back recruiting as we've been talking about. Last year, it was the defensive line, and the year before, it was the offensive line. This could be the year of the DB. So there are still a lot of pop for certain really, really good players. But, so after Ewald last night, Miami had initially, after landing Chris Ewald, moved from number 25 in their overall recruiting class per the 24/7 Sports Composite to 17 last night. But then a couple things have happened since then. When Drake Stubs decommitted from USC was sitting right in front of Miami at number 16. When Stubs decommitted from the Trojans, that hurt the Trojans, so Miami moved up from number 17 to 16. Now that Miami has landed Scroggins, Miami moves up from number 16 to number 15. So that's where Miami currently is in their class of 2025 recruiting ranking. Let me see if I can pull up the total ranking so we can see who else is in front of the Hurricanes. So you have Ohio State at number 1, Alabama at 2, Georgia at 3, Notre Dame 4, Oklahoma 5, Penn State 6, Clemson 7. I think Clemson now is the only ACC team that's in front of Miami. Auburn at number 8. Texas A&M at 9, LSU 10th, Rutgers 11th, Tennessee 12th, TCU 13th, Wisconsin 14th. Miami just moved up in front of Michigan to move into 15th place. Michigan at 16, Texas 17, Georgia Tech at 18. They've been doing really well. Oregon at 19, South Carolina 20. And again, I'm going to break my my scroll button if I try to scroll all the way down to find Florida State, but I'll do it for you guys. Florida State is number 64th in recruiting right now. Or they're going to do better than that. Like I'm not as dumb as these Florida State trolls who like a month ago were like, "Hey, Miami's got like the 70th rated class. You guys stink." Like, they were saying that in like April. I'm not going to troll them too much in June because I know Mike Norvell is probably not going to finish with a top 10 class, but he's definitely not going to finish with the 64th class. They're probably going to get into the top 20 or somewhere around that area. But Florida State currently 64th. And the Florida Gators are currently 68th. Woof. But they only have 7 verbal commits. Florida State only has 6 right now. For Miami, in adding Scroggins, the Hurricanes now have 14 verbal commits for this class of 2025, which are Brock Schott, Gerard Pringle, Schott the tight end, Pringle running back, Amari Wallace, defensive back, Chris Ewald, defensive back, Luca Gilbert, tight end, Ezekiel Marcelin, the linebacker, Elijah Melendez, the linebacker. I love these linebackers. And, we'll talk about the Fong bomb in a second. Timothy Merritt, cornerback, Luke Nickel, quarterback, who we spoke to on the show last night. If you haven't checked out that episode, please check it out. Luke is awesome. You can tell this guy's a born leader. Max Buchanan, offensive lineman, Demetrius Campbell, offensive lineman, TK Mew, offensive lineman, Jaden Wilkerson, offensive lineman, and then Herbert Scroggins, the defensive end, being the newest addition to that class. So we're looking at what could be some of the next commitments to drop. Steve Wiltfong dropped the Fong bomb early this morning, for the Miami Hurricanes to land 4-star IMG Academy linebacker Gavin Nix. Now, Fong was not the first person to drop a prediction for Nix. There have been some of those coming in from 24/7 Sports and On3. I like where Miami is positioned with Nix, so I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's looking pretty good right now for Miami to possibly add one of the very best linebackers in the class of 2025 to their class. And D-Nick, Coach Derek Nicholson, man, he's like he seems to be competing with Jason Taylor right now and Alex Mirabal. It's like who's going to pull in the most guys in our position group? Because D-Nick, of course, Miami recently solidified the commitment of Elijah Melendez. He shut down the rest of his recruitment. He's definitely going to be a Cane. And Miami added Ezekiel Marcelin on Sunday. So if Miami can soon add Gavin Nix, that's a hell of a job recruiting linebackers in this class. That's he's going to be telling Alex Mirabal and Jason Taylor, "Hold my beer, guys. I'm going out there and grabbing one." So that would be a big addition for Miami. We got some big stuff coming up later on the show today. We're gonna have more, maybe 2, maybe 3 more episodes of Locked On Canes today. Mario Cristobal doesn't let me sleep. You're pulling in players like twice a day. We're pulling in verbal commits. This is crazy. So we'll talk about what's to come. You guys want to keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, just because now the NHL is done, congratulations to my Florida Panthers. I'm still buzzing from that Stanley Cup. The NBA finals are over. There's so much still going on that you can bet on, guys. International soccer, Major League Baseball. Like I'm on the FanDuel app every day and I'm having a blast. I never want the sports to stop. Now, I know the playoffs have winded down. We get fewer games, but even when the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to, FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's some for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. All right, so folks, I mentioned it's going to be a busy day for us here on Locked On Canes because later on today afternoon, we're going to be interviewing multiple current Miami Hurricanes players. It is a Canes Connection Friday. And I was going to wait till the afternoon to release an episode today, but when this Herbert Scroggins thing started happening, I needed to give my man a welcome to the U. So we're going to have more episodes today. We're going to have interviews courtesy of CanesConnection.com with multiple Miami Hurricanes players later on today. Tomorrow, we're going to have a breakdown with a Pro Football Focus college analyst talking about his views on where Miami stands heading into this upcoming season, because Miami gets a lot of love on PFF. Like Cam Ward is very popular. Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher get high marks from Pro Football Focus. Miami's receiving core, especially Xavier Restrepo, get high marks there. Miami's offensive line, Miami's defensive line. I want to see how worried they are about Miami's defensive backfield, but we are going to talk tomorrow with a Pro Football Focus analyst about where Miami stands heading into next year. So we got a lot of stuff to come here on Locked On Canes. You guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, you want to smash that like button, hit that thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's like 100 podcast apps. We're on all of them. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your pods. So, folks, we will be back later today, if not multiple times later today. So you always want to keep it locked right here on Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.